In every court, every council, every group of men, there are those who appear strong, yet are nothing but paper tigers. They speak boldly, posture like kings, but in the moment of trial, they crumble. Today, I will reveal to you 3 behaviors that betray the weak man instantly, so that you may identify him before he becomes a liability, or before you become his prey. In the art of power, survival depends not merely on strength, but on the ability to see through illusions. The truly dangerous man is not the one who boasts, but the one who hides his weakness well. Yet, as I have studied both princes and peasants, I have discovered that weakness cannot remain hidden forever. It leaks through certain predictable cracks. I call this the identification tactic. In the courts of men, you will encounter those who are loud before they are capable, those who advertise their strength long before they have proved it. This is the first and most obvious behavior of the weak man, overcompensation through words. The more fragile the foundation, the more desperate he becomes to build towering walls of noise to hide the cracks. Listen to him speak. His language is swollen with boasts and promises, grand declarations of what he will do, what he can do, what others should believe about him. It is a theater of power without the substance of it. A truly powerful man does not need to tell you he is powerful. His presence makes you aware without a single syllable. Like a general who stands silent on the eve of battle, his calm is a warning in itself. But the weak man is terrified that his strength will be doubted, so he floods the air with proclamations meant to convince you, and more importantly, to convince himself. He must construct a verbal fortress, because he has no real one. Watch him in conversation. He interrupts others to insert his own tales of triumph, but the victories are always vague, unprovable, or exaggerated. He will tell you he has crushed rivals, that he commands loyalty, that women or men flock to him, that he has influence others cannot match. But when you press for details, the stories either shift or dissolve entirely. His language is a shield, one that cracks when exposed to scrutiny. Understand that overcompensation is not just a habit of the insecure, it is a survival tactic. A man who senses he is vulnerable will often attempt to project the opposite image as a deterrent. In the courts of kings, this was common among minor lords with no armies to defend them. They would drape themselves in silk, hire loud heralds to announce their arrival, and speak as though they ruled half the world, hoping that no one would question the truth until it was too late. The modern weak man behaves the same way. His arena may be an office, a social circle, or a relationship, but his weapons remain the same, empty declarations and an unearned tone of authority. Observe the rhythm of his speech. Power can afford silence. Weakness cannot. He fills every pause with words, fearing that if the air goes quiet, others will begin to notice the hollowness behind his facade. You will hear him make sweeping generalizations about life, about success, about dominance, phrases stolen from books, from speeches, from the lips of stronger men. He recycles the words of others as if they were his own hard-won wisdom, because he has little original experience to draw upon. A weak man's overcompensation often turns theatrical when he senses a challenge. If someone questions him, he grows louder, faster, more animated. This is the verbal equivalent of a cornered animal baring its teeth, not to attack, but to frighten you away from testing his strength. And like the cornered animal, his energy is short-lived. Push him further, and the rage will give way to excuses or a sudden change of subject. Consider how Machiavelli himself would view such a man. In matters of state, he would advise that a prince observe not only what a man says, but how and when he says it. A strong ally speaks little and acts decisively. A weak ally seeks to fill every meeting with his own voice, as though his presence must be justified through sheer volume. Such men are dangerous to trust because they are guided more by the image they wish to uphold than by the truth of the situation. Their need to appear strong will lead them to rash promises and ill-considered moves that will entangle not only themselves, but anyone aligned with them. Even in personal life, this behavior is telling. The man who constantly proclaims that he is a good friend, loyal, or respected often says so because his actions do not naturally inspire those conclusions. The man who must tell you how honest he is has already betrayed the suspicion that he is not. Overcompensation is a confession dressed as confidence. It is the verbal mask that the weak man cannot help but wear, for he fears that without it, his true face will be seen, and it will not command the respect he craves. If you wish to identify such a man, you must do more than hear his words. You must weigh them against the reality of his actions. Look for the gap between what he claims and what he can prove. The wider that gap, the weaker the man. Listen for patterns. Does he speak often of battles but never show the scars? Does he recount endless victories but never the details of how they were won? Does he promise grand results yet deliver only excuses? His tongue will tell you more about his weakness than his enemies ever could. And here is the most telling sign. A strong man may speak less, but when he does, his words move others. His words move up. A weak man speaks endlessly, but when he finishes, nothing changes. His voice is like the beating of a drum before an army that never marches. A sound and a spectacle, but no substance behind it. This is the overcompensation of the weak man. The hope that words will substitute for deeds, that noise will be mistaken for force, that illusion will be taken for reality. There is a kind of man who stands confidently when victory is certain, yet vanishes into shadows the moment fortune turns. This man carries the appearance of a participant in the game of power, but when the time comes to bear the weight of his own decisions, he becomes a ghost. This is the second behavior that marks the weak man, his instinctive avoidance of responsibility. You will see it in his eyes before you hear it in his words. The moment blame draws near, the gaze shifts, searching for another target, another scapegoat, another distraction to redirect the blow. He will name the weather, the timing, the interference of rivals, the incompetence of subordinates, anything, anyone, so long as his own name remains untouched. In this, the weak man reveals more about himself than any enemy could hope to uncover. For a man's willingness to own his failures is as telling as his ability to claim his victories. In the courts of old, this was the servant who bowed deeply when the prince's plan succeeded, yet in times of disaster, whispered to the court that the strategy was not his to begin with. In councils of war, he was the commander who, after a defeat, would remind the king that he had warned against this course, though in truth he had raised no protest when the decision was made. Such a man survives not by merit, but by ensuring that when the sword falls, it never falls upon his neck. This avoidance is not always open and obvious. Sometimes it is subtle, wrapped in the silk of diplomacy. The weak man may use phrases like, "We all bear some responsibility," or "the situation was beyond anyone's control." These are words designed to dissolve the focus of blame into the air, to blur lines until no one can be certain who is at fault. But a prince or any man of discernment must be able to see through such fog. Behind this shared guilt lies the truth. This man is unwilling to face the consequences of his own hand. It is not merely a flaw of character. It is a danger to all who are near him. When a man avoids responsibility, he also avoids learning from his mistakes. He repeats them, dressing each in new excuses, never growing wiser. Worse still, his habit of shifting blame corrodes trust. Allies begin to speak less freely around him, knowing that in the event of failure, he will be the first to point the finger and the last to stand in solidarity. There is a moment you must watch for, the moment after a decision has been made but before its outcome is known. A man of strength will stand firmly beside the choice, knowing that if it fails, he will face the consequences as well as the praise if it succeeds. The weak man, however, begins planting seeds of escape even before the harvest. He will say, "I had my doubts from the start," or "This wasn't entirely my call." These words are an insurance policy against the possibility of failure. They allow him to claim foresight if the plan collapses and loyalty if it succeeds. Observe him in smaller matters, for the avoidance of responsibility is not limited to grand decisions. In daily life, he will break promises, then explain that circumstances left him no choice. He will fail to deliver what he committed to, then list a series of obstacles that sound plausible but never seem to trouble men of greater resolve. This is his art, turning his inability into a tale of misfortune, as though fate itself conspires against him. Machiavelli would warn you that such a man is poison to leadership. A ruler must know which of his men will hold their position when the enemy advances, and which will retreat while claiming they were never given proper support. In moments of crisis, the weak man will protect his image before he protects the mission, and in protecting his image, he will endanger the mission further. There is also vanity in his evasion. He believes that by distancing himself from failure, he preserves his reputation. In truth, those who watch closely see through it. They may not speak of it openly, but they mark his name as one who cannot be relied upon when storms break. In the marketplace, such a man loses partners. In politics, he loses allies. In personal life, he loses respect. Yet he often remains blind to this erosion, for those who abandon him rarely do so with confrontation. They simply stop entrusting him with anything of weight. When confronted directly, the weak man will often react with indignation. He will insist that he has been misunderstood, that he has been unfairly accused. He will wrap himself in wounded pride, hoping that his show of offense will divert attention from the truth. But remember, the truly wronged man seeks only to correct the record. The weak man seeks to smother the discussion altogether. In the end, avoiding responsibility is more than a defense mechanism. It is an instinct that governs all his actions. It is why he hesitates to commit fully to any course. It is why he positions himself always at the edge of decisive moments, ready to step forward if the tide is favorable, or step back into obscurity if it is not. This is how he survives in the short term, but it is also why he will never command the lasting loyalty of those around him. There is a truth in the study of men that cannot be ignored. Power is not only a matter of resources, influence, or physical force. Power begins with mastery over the self. The man who cannot govern his own heart and mind cannot hope to govern anything beyond them. And it is here that the weak man exposes himself most clearly, through his inability to control his emotions. You will know him not in moments of comfort, but in moments of strain. When the plan falters, when insult touches his pride, when envy creeps into his mind, the mask slips. His composure fractures, and what emerges is the raw, untempered impulse that controls him more than he controls it. He becomes loud where silence would serve him, reckless where caution would shield him, and impulsive where strategy would win him ground. Observe him in the presence of provocation. A strong man can endure the sting of insult without flinching, biding his time until response becomes advantageous. But the weak man burns to answer immediately. His pride demands instant satisfaction, even if it costs him position. He does not calculate the value of restraint, for his ego insists that every slight must be avenged at once, no matter the cost. This need to react is his leash, and any adversary who discovers it can lead him wherever they wish. History is rich with examples. In the courts of power, rivals would plant false whispers, knowing the insecure courtier could not resist confronting them in public, thereby making himself look unstable before the prince. In war, a patient commander would lure an enemy into charging too soon, exploiting the heat of their temper to draw them into a trap. In personal life, the manipulator provokes jealousy or fear in the weak man, knowing that once emotion clouds his vision, he will make errors that cannot be undone. The weak man believes that emotion is proof of authenticity, that his outbursts show he is passionate or fearless. But in reality, they show that he is predictable, and predictability is a fatal flaw in the game of power. A man whose moves can be forecast by simply pressing on his feelings is no threat to the calculating opponent. He is a tool waiting to be used. It is not only anger that betrays him. Envy eats at him in silence until it bursts into subtle sabotage, whispers, or overt challenges meant to undermine those he perceives as rivals. Fear makes him retreat from opportunities, dressing his withdrawal as prudence. Desperation drives him to agree to terms he should reject, surrendering advantage for the illusion of safety. In each case, it is not logic guiding him. It is the search of an unmastered emotion. There is a quiet danger in a man who cannot control his emotions. He may appear harmless in calm weather, but when the storm rises, his decisions can become destructive, not only to himself but to those who stand beside him. He may speak secrets in rage that should have remained guarded. He may commit to alliances out of spite that weaken his position. He may burn bridges that could have carried him to greater heights, simply to satisfy the fleeting pleasure of a heated retaliation. A prince or any man seeking power must therefore study his allies and his enemies alike in moments of high tension. Observe who maintains the same steady hand whether fortune smiles or frowns. These are men who can be trusted with command. And note who flares with temper, who trembles with fear, who becomes erratic when pressure mounts. These are the weak, and their weakness will spread to whatever cause they touch. The most insidious aspect of this flaw is that the weak man rarely sees it as a weakness. He tells himself that his emotions make him human, that they prove his honesty, that they show he is unafraid to speak his mind. But power is not concerned with honesty, it is concerned with results. The enemy will not spare him because his rage was genuine. The world will not grant him advantage because his fear was sincere. Only the outcome matters, and a man ruled by emotion loses control of that outcome the moment he opens the door to impulse. If you wish to unmask such a man, you need not confront him directly. Simply create the conditions in which his emotions are tested. Delay what he wants. Challenge his opinion in front of others. Offer him a minor insult wrapped in politeness. Watch if he swallows it for later use, or if he spits his reaction instantly. The weak man cannot store his energy for the right moment. He spends it the instant it rises, leaving himself depleted when the true battle begins. The ability to maintain a calm exterior is more than a matter of dignity. It is a weapon. It keeps opponents guessing. It denies them the pleasure of knowing they have reached you. The weak man does the opposite. He tells the world exactly where and how to strike him by broadcasting his emotional state at every turn. He makes himself transparent, and transparency is fatal in a contest of ambition. Now you have seen the 3 signs that strip away the mask of the weak man: his overcompensation through words, his avoidance of responsibility, and his inability to control his emotions. These are not random flaws. They are patterns, habits of the powerless that repeat themselves across history, from the courts of ancient princes to the streets and offices of today. Understand that such men are more than harmless pretenders. Their weakness makes them liabilities in any alliance, cracks in any foundation, openings through which enemies can strike. If you fail to recognize them, you may build with them, plan with them, even trust them, only to watch them collapse when pressure comes. But recognition is not enough. The wise man uses this knowledge as both shield and mirror. Shield to protect himself from those who would drag him into their ruin. Mirror to ensure he never walks their path himself. For the true strength that commands loyalty and respect is not found in noise, excuses, or outbursts. It is found in the quiet certainty of a man who speaks less than he acts, accepts the weight of his choices, and governs himself before he seeks to govern others.